All right. So I just wanted to talk about this a little bit. And the reason I'm going to talk about this is because this is something that I've talked about before. When I made a video on the rat utopia bullshit, you see, the idea behind the rat utopia stuff was that people would figure out how to do certain things for society and people would understand certain conditions and all this different shit. But in reality, the entire rat utopia was a dumbass experiment because anyone could just simply rationalize, oh, we put a bunch of animals inside of a box. They're eventually gonna fucking die, even if they have all the food and all the resources that they need, because they're not going, like, animals don't speak like us. So they're not gonna have all the situations that make them rationalize properly together when they're out in the wild. Right? They're going to do things and then eventually devolve and start just, you know, having sex, killing each other, etc. Because that's what a natural conscious being does when you don't have anything to do and you're like with the rat utopia shit, it was so dumb because they were cut off and they literally lived in a small environment and then they could still hear people on the outside. It was dumb as fuck. It was a dumbass experiment. But the reason why I'm making this video, right, is because when it comes to this Mr. Beast stuff with the 100 wells, helping people and fixing the circumstances people live in is very, very easy. You have to contemplate a few facts that I'm going to explain, right? There are 8 billion people right now. So if half of that amount of people died, let's say there was a disease or war, let's say they all just magically disappeared. No one would have to work for at least 10 to 20 years. You know why? Because all of the food not all the food those people would have eaten, but all of the houses those people lived in, all the money, all the cars, all the clothes, everything they leave behind, you would now have 4 billion extra. So no one really have to work, no one really have to do anything again. But with our society, if half of the people stop existing, nothing good would come of that. It would get terrible for people because there's systems at play where it doesn't even matter. The system doesn't matter. You just need to be alive, working. No one cares about your well-being and all this different shit. People are trying to times 200% every single activity that a human being does. So, right, like you can see even with YouTube, it used to be something where you could just put videos, interesting things, have fun. Now this shit is people's jobs, and people are trying to become millionaires and billionaires off of it. The problem with the human race, the reason why we're even at the point where people need 100 wells, is very simple. It's because no one gives a shit. And people are using all the resources that you could use on making things better that don't really need to be better. But there was a point in this video that I wanted to talk about. It's where the lady says some shit about it, who's been in an organization for a while. I'm gonna play this portion of the video.
money, you could do something. The guy with a lot of money does something, and he's a white savior.
So in addition to that, CNN talked to the founder and CEO of the water infrastructure organization Face Africa, who said, "I've been doing this for 15 years, but we've been struggling to continue the work because funding, awareness, and advocacy all take work." And adding, overnight, this person comes along who happens to be a white male figure with a huge platform, and all of a sudden he gets all of the attention. It's kind of frustrating, but it's also understanding the nature of how the world is. And with that saying, it was good that Mr. Beast installed these wells, but also adding that doing it sustainably is what matters. Right? Arguing that it's one thing to install wells and another to actually have them working 5 years from now. With their organization Face also going on to explain so much more of the wider context.
I can understand her frustration.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to make something happen.
Okay, now here's the reality of everything that she said. Complete waste of time. Thinking completely in the wrong direction. Absolutely fucking stupid. And I'm gonna say exactly why, right? The reason why is because, okay, you've been taking years to make these 100 wells, more wells. You haven't made a single fucking one yet. So he comes by, he basically finishes the fucking job for you. That means that now, instead of focusing on trying to help and create, you can focus on sustaining shit. See, this is why the government and all this shit is just a fucking scam at the end of the day. Because what she would have said if she was actually putting effort into doing what she said she was doing would have been like, oh, wow, thanks, this dude came along, he did this thing for us, and now we can just focus on sustaining what he left behind. Would you be willing to help some more? Right? Like, those are the only two actual things that could actually help the situation. Because the whole, he gets all the attention. Like, who gives a fuck? People are dying. Even in the video, they were talking about some people on one of the bridges have died over the years trying to get over the bridge. They're talking about how unhealthy the water they're drinking. It's like, bro, it's retarded that she's out here commenting on the fact that he's getting all the attention, the fact that she's been doing it for so long with no results, etc. Who gives a shit? The reason why he was even able to do it in the first place is because he's not taking time going through all these dumbass systems that are meant to grab as much money from you as it possibly can. He just went out and did the thing. If he had done what you did, you'd be in the exact same space as you right now. What you should be realizing is that the way things are being done is retarded, stupid, is meant to waste your time, and it will never have you having the results that he's gotten. But instead you're complaining about the results that he got, that you wish you could have got. Like, this is fucking retarded. But anyways, I'm going to play more of the video, because this is about where I was in the video.
Off the ground, it's hard to get pennies. You see this dude coming with all this money, and he's fixing on such a larger scale you could ever imagine. It's like, bro, I gotta ask for grants, I gotta fight for every dollar, and all of a sudden this dude come out of nowhere. I can understand your ego being hurt.
Because there's sounds in the background.
About that. But at the end of the day, you got to put that shit aside because it's not about you. It's about the people you serve.
Exactly. Your point was to give people water, not the fact that you gave people water.
Yep. Yep.
That's what you wanted.
And here's the truth about a lot of these NGOs. A lot of them go and do this, and they do this in ways that are not sustainable. They do this in ways that require the NGO to constantly be present in order to make sure that the well keeps functioning. So what ends up happening is that the NGO ensures itself that the government has to keep funding it. But if the government doesn't, then the people are stranded because the NGOs are the only ones who have actually the ability to fix those wells. So I like the idea of what Mr. Beast did because he created a long-term sustainability plan, and he also made sure that these things could be maintained long-term. Now, if it turns out that's not the case, then I have no issue with people taking criticism. But my understanding is that is what he did. Okay? And that's the case with most of the stuff. From what I've seen, I've never seen this man try to be charitable in a way that isn't thinking about the long-term effects of it. Right? He doesn't seem like he just wants to hand people a bunch of crackheads a bunch of money and be like, well, we donated. No.
Let's see where that goes.
Most of the stuff he does, it seems like he follows through on it and he really tries to make sure that they last for a long time. So for that reason alone, I have to show him some respect because I know what it's like to live in those communities. I know what it's like to see those communities. I know what it's like to walk through those places on a regular basis. It ain't pretty. So I could never, in my heart of hearts, fault him for that because I know all those people are just so happy. He didn't just do that. He built bridges in the video. He took time to really talk to the communities. And I just thought, for me, I've seen what activism looks like when it's empty calories just for your own self-adulation. And I've seen what it's like when it's meant to be impactful. And I think as long as you're really thinking through how you're going to help these people, I have no problem. I don't care if it's purple, white, blue, pink, rainbow-colored motherfuckers. I don't give a fuck who it is. They want to go and help. I encourage them to help. Just make sure you're doing it properly. That's all that matters. That's it.
All those so-called companies or organizations are supposed to help people that go there. Let's say, oh, we're going to build schools. So they get a whole bunch of white girls to go build schools over there. And the next day they undo the school or the wall to have more people to come back to pay money. And that's what I'm talking about by malicious intent. He doesn't have that. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. He just helps it and gets the fuck out. But no, it's not the picture perfect thing that you want. Your Hollywood picture perfect winning thing that you want, your scenario that you want. So that's what I was talking about and referring to.
The consequences that come from not having access to water, right? Because beyond causing serious illness, it prevents children from getting an education because they need to help with water retrieval. This is something that disproportionately impacts girls and women as they're seen as the ones in charge of managing water and cooking and cleaning, with Face's website adding, the lost number of potential school days in education hinders the next generation of African women from breaking out of the cycle of unequal opportunity for gainful employment. With safe water nearby, women are free to pursue new economic opportunities and improve their families' lives. Also, in this situation, you have others arguing that this whole controversy highlights far more than just the issues with water in African countries, right? Some pointing to larger issues with income inequality. And understandably, while a number of places have this issue, a lot of the focus was on Kenya, as that's where a lot of Mr. B's video took place. And actually with that, CNN pointed to a Kenyan activist who suggested that Mr. B's video brought shame to the country, right? Saying leaders get grants for cars, but somehow there's no money to drill more holes for wells so people can have drinking water. And actually to dive into that, you had Reuters doing a report back in 2018 noting that while Kenya's economy had grown roughly 5% annually over the last decade, it has not been equally distributed and has made the gap between the rich and the poor wider. And this is a small minority of Kenyans receive the wealth and it's not trickled down.
That has nothing to do with Mr. Beast. That's not Mr. Beast. That's a whole other problem with other people's doing those issues. Yeah, it brought light to some of the people that are not helping and everything and stuff, despite the growth that they're doing. So if you tackle that and you say, yo, you point at the government that should be helping them and are not, yeah, there goes your problem.
Yeah, infrastructure in Africa is like probably one of the largest things holding the development of the country back. You still have so many parts of Africa, even like growing economies that are like, we're talking about dirt roads, places that are not efficient, the way they build the roads around mountainsides rather than going through with tunnels because they can't afford to. And then like inefficient roads make blockades very common, so it's very easy for trade routes to be blocked off. Africa in general has a lot of infrastructure issues. What makes it even worse is a lot of contractors are just thieves, straight up. They get government contracts, they sit on the fucking work, they go very slowly to ensure that they can accumulate the maximum amount of wealth, and because they have a monopoly on this shit, they slow it down as much as they can. You know, a lot of the things holding back Africa, and Africans in general, are greedy elites. That's just what it is. That's not a myth. That's not something I made up. That's something that's well documented. It is a fact. Go ahead. See where the money goes when it goes to local governments. You have too many people in positions of power that are just lining their pockets. So how am I going to get mad at Mr. Beast? Y'all motherfuckers want to talk about stereotypes. Brother, those stereotypes are not lies. That whole idea about elites being corrupt, that's not lies.
I got a little sense of
how many times are we having government turnovers? How many times are we having uprisings in a lot of African nations because people want to topple the government that's just making deals with foreign governments to enrich themselves at the
Okay, I accidentally pressed stop, but this is something else that I wanted to talk about, right? Not from this video. This is something that I want to talk about now because I just heard it. But I had an experience, right? I was in class. This was a very long time ago. And I was annoyed with history that we were learning because it's dumb as fuck. We were learning about the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayas, all that type of bullshit. And then they started talking about one of the people who was taking money and resources, and then they were just like using all the money and resources, but then they were letting the people die in the village and all this shit. And then the teacher kept talking, blah, blah, blah. And then they got to the point when they were talking about the people shouldn't have killed the leaders because that's not how this should have been handled. And I was like annoyed at the teacher because what he had said at that point was dumb as fuck. If you were living with somebody who's taking resources that you would have used on yourself, your family, your friends, and then they would have used it on some of their family and their friends, and they're taking these resources and oh shit, now your cousin's dead. Oh shit, now your grandma's dead. Why shouldn't you go after the people who are making that consequence of you giving your resources to them? Right? And the problem with teaching people this type of dumbass shit in history is because I can understand the point that the dumbass teacher was making. It was like, oh, we can't do civilization this way because if the people are still alive, then they could still help you. But we're literally looking at the result of the help that they were doing, and it was corrupt help. It wasn't real help. Literally, millions of Aztecs and Mayans and shit were dying because of the leadership. Literally because of the leadership. These people did, what was it? Human sacrifices because of the leadership. There's tons of shit that they were doing that was terrible. So the fact that the teacher was grading this bullshit on whether or not we said that it was, the right thing for them to revolt against these dumbass leaders, like it just comes down to, right? And at that moment, I remember being so fucking annoyed because it comes down to a lot of bullshit that people in society shovel into your fucking brain. Really, people want you to believe in dumbass shit that literally has no value because it's about circumstances that now we don't even have to fucking deal with anymore. If people do the right fucking shit, right? But it just comes back to this right here, right? How it comes back to this is because these people in these countries, it's like they still have problems because of simple things in life, but we also have stuff like education systems and all this shit. Like, why couldn't we just teach the people to build and repair the shit that they would need, and then give them some resources, and then be like, look, all you gotta do is build us some of the shit as well. I mean, like it's just all so dumb. Like, imagine if the people who are in control of all this shit in Kenya and all that shit, what if they sat down and said, look, these people need water, they need electricity, they need schools. How about we educate them to build these things, right? And then we get them to build and create some of these resources for us. It all comes back to the simple fact that these people don't need these people in the first fucking place. Otherwise, they would be having their cities and towns look just as good as the other cities that aren't going through this bullshit. But it's like all this stuff with the human race, This is why, honestly, I just say that the human race is dog shit. Because it always comes back down to, whatchamacallit, maintaining your population. At the end of the day, the human race can exist with 1 million people. You don't need billions of people to any degree. This is a big ass planet. If there was 1 million people spread across the entire planet, there would be no issues at all other than whether or not these people are dumb as fuck. But because people are inherently dumb as fuck, you could never do something like this, and it will remain a theoretical plot point as to how people could do life and sustain life without doing fucked up shit to each other. Like the fucking Israeli war and all this shit, like the Ukraine war. I mean, but the reality is that human race is dog shit. I mean, it's like everyone's so fucking useless at the end of the day. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to build cities. We'd be able to just live in whatever little hut. You know what I mean? But then people get sick. People start getting psychopathic and murdering each other and all this other shit. Right? People start abusing their fucking family members, brainwashing people. But at the end of the day, it's all dumb as fuck. It's all dumb as fuck.